on, guys? My name is Danny Rose, and welcome to Battle of the Beards here at Scholar TV. I'm sure this gentleman over here is going to win that competition.
Yes,
I'm
Padawan, you have long to go.
so this guy is Dave Kropf. He is the course director for Project and Portfolio 2 in the music production um, course. Career path. And so I always like to start these shows, Mr. Croft, with a little bit of bio. Tell us a little bit about yourself. And
Well, the first thing I can tell you is feel free to call me Dave. I appreciate you calling me Mr. Croft, but no, Dave. I prefer Dave because, in professional environments, once you get past a point of introductions and you start having a relationship, whether it's a publisher or a client or whatever, eventually, I mean, unless it's Miss Knowles, or Miss Houston, Beyonce, whatever, then first name basis. And so I'm on first name basis with all my publishers and clients. So by all means, please call me Dave.
nice.
Well, I'm a production music composer. I don't consider myself a prodigy. I didn't, wasn't born, with drumsticks in my hand or playing piano. I took sixth grade band, and in middle school, I heard the Back to the Future soundtrack and fell in love. Wanted to be a film composer, but was a drummer and a percussionist all throughout school. And that's what I did in college. I did the whole drumline thing and orchestra and did a ton of musical theater, but composing and not really songwriting, because I'm not really a lyricist nor a poet. But being a composer was always on my radar, and so I would always write little what I didn't know at the time. I was writing cues, little chunks of music that kind of told a story or underscored an emotion or something. And long story short, did a stint teaching drums and percussion in Memphis, and had the opportunity to come to Florida and teach at Full Sail, where I flipped. Instead of being a drummer who composes here in Florida, I'm a composer who drums. So I still do musical theater, I still play at church and that kind of thing, but I'm a production music composer. And that means that I write music primarily for television that I don't score to picture. Instead, I write music that lives in a catalog, a production music catalog, aka library music, and then editors for so many shows, whether it's, the Great American Bake Off or Real Housewives of Atlanta or Inked or whatever, the editors putting those shows together need a piece of music that is tense or that is funny or that is dramatic. And they will go to the catalog, put a bunch of search terms in, get music, and then edit the music to go underneath the scene. And I write music that goes in those scenes. And so I write music for Discovery Channel. I write music for CBS Sports. I do a lot of stuff with CBS Sports, namely the NFL, the PGA, the NCAA tournament, the Big Three, even a bull riding, bowling, college rugby. Yeah. Basically anything that CBS Sports puts on air, my cues get used. And that is what I do, and that's what I teach.
Awesome. Beyond that, you also do the 52 Qs podcast, which I'll put a link to that below, because that is such a wealth of information on your platform.
Thank you. Yeah, the 52 Qs community, the podcast is an extension of the community, which right now is a Facebook group, but I have plans coming in Q2 of 2022 to expand well beyond just a Facebook group. Basically bringing in like functionality of a Facebook group and a Discord server and a Slack server and like Patreon with like rewards and stuff, and kind of mashing it all into one thing. And but we are a collection of like-minded composers, all with the idea of production music, writing production music, and focusing on one cue per week and making that one cue each week the best cue it can be. And so that's what the community is about. And that's what the podcast is an extension of.
Absolutely. So yes, music aside, you are a very how do I put this? Insightful educator.
Well, thank
Uh,
you. I appreciate that.
and I was watching your podcast a couple weeks ago, and that's what prompted this show. You did a show on the top five most consistent, top five mistakes you see students consistently make.
Yes.
Um, and that I had paused the video. I wrote down, um, uh, email Dave Kropf about short-sightedness is what I put. Um, but that that whole subject is perfect for our scholars here at the NSCS. It's perfect for all students.
Yep.
And because if somebody could tell me where the mines in the minefield were, I would accept that information. So that's why I had to have you on, and so we can jump into this.
Yeah, no, I completely appreciate. Like I said in my video, I've been teaching specifically higher ed for over 20 years, like 21 years, I think. I started in 2001, and I started out wanting to be a band director, but then I saw like my friends student teaching in public schools. I was like, that's not for me. I really have a passion for teaching adult students who have an idea of what they want to do with their lives, as opposed to just, I want to be in band because I didn't want to take gym. That's not, I'm not interested in talking to those people. I bless and affirm band directors. Without band directors, I would not be here. But career-minded composers, I am all about that. And yeah, that podcast entry was the 5 things that I see students consistently get wrong about specifically being a composer.
Right. Well, I mean, it can be applied to a lot of different areas, though. I believe because a lot of the points can be in any kind of production, in any kind of artistic expression.
Yeah. No, you're right. You're absolutely right.
So yeah, let's jump right into that. Let's hit me with number one.
Number one is students have a myopic vision of what their careers will be. And this is something that Full Sail does really, really well. Where if you're going to come to Full Sail and be a film student, even though you want to direct or you want to be a screenwriter, you're going to learn how to hang lights, right? You're going to learn how to rig a set. You're going to learn how to paint and construct and write scripts and edit in Final Cut. You're going to learn all of these things because the career doing the one thing that you want to do it's a journey. You're going to have to walk through a lot of aspects that might seem tangential to the one thing you want to do. And I've seen students come into my class and like, I want to be a songwriter. And they feel like what I'm teaching, which is production music, is like either somehow beneath them or irrelevant because that's not what they want to do. Or they take a game music class and like, I don't want to write music for games. I want to produce hip hop beats, or I want to DJ, EDM clubs or something. So they don't put energy into that because they think it's irrelevant. And when you're on the front 9 of your career, when you're really early learning about the business, there's so much of the industry you don't understand. But for me, if I can make a living making music, and the bigger that umbrella is, the bigger that circle of what a career in the industry means, then that means that I don't necessarily have to go work a retail job. I did that. I worked at a dollar theater. I worked at a roller rink. I did all of that. I worked third shift at American Express. I get it. But if I can, if my goal is to, for example, I want to be a film composer, but I can also make some money doing some arrangements or teaching lessons or making beats for TV or, helping to do some orchestral thing, whatever. It's all part of that large umbrella. And so I see students come into the class, specifically my class, because my class about production music is for many students the very first time they hear about that whole side of the industry. Like they never really thought, who writes the music for Deadliest Catch? They never really think of that, but somebody had to write the music, and it's not a composer, scoring to the picture. Oh, they're about to bring up some crab meat. Let's write da-da-da, da-da-da. No, they write a piece of music that sits in a library. But this is a whole side of the industry they hadn't thought. And students will often have a very narrow field of what they think a career in the industry looks like. So I think that's number one.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, why choose just one thing when, these days everybody needs some kind of hustle to develop multiple revenue streams anyway. I mean, in any industry, being opened up to production music through your class has ignited me in a big way. Like I see a much clearer path forward than I did before your class because I see all these different jobs as separate, like different lanes
Hmm.
that I can travel. I can traverse different lanes to get to where I'm going. Um, so because I wanted to be a film composer, that's why I started, coming to Full Sail. And I didn't know what production music was. So you're exactly right about that. Like I'm a prime example. Coming into your class, I thought it was just composition. I thought it was all film composing. Um, so I didn't realize that it was two separate things. Uh, so yeah, number two.
Number two is students often want instant results. Students expect that it's gonna happen overnight, and I think that's part of just youth. I'm getting up there. I remember I was once 18, 19, 20, 25, or whatever. And so part of it is, yes, the impatience of youth, but I think also because so many Full Sail students are ready. Very few Full Sail students, in my experience, come to Full Sail just to kind of explore themselves. Nobody comes to Full Sail just to have the hacky sack in a quad experience. I'm going to rush my fraternity and I'll figure out what I want later. No, the vast majority of Full Sail students know exactly what they want to do in their career and they are ready for it. Especially, adult students with a few miles, on their engine. They come out because they maybe corporate life chewed them up, or maybe traditional college chewed them up. And so they're really, really hungry and ready for it.
Yeah,
But it takes time. These skills take time. I've seen really talented students who are terrible at production music, not because they're terrible students or terrible composers, but they're just learning it. And so have patience with yourself. This is the career is a long arc. And one of my goals is to instill in my students sustainable creativity so that they can have a sustainable 20, 30, 40-year career. And to be able to make that kind of investment into yourself, into your soul, right? That takes a little bit of time. And so you're making all these little deposits and you've got to get time for the intellectual principle to grow large enough to where you can start drawing off of the interest. And so um, often students are impatient, not because they're young and impatient, but they're hungry and ready for it. So just let yourself. It's okay.
yeah,
You'll get there.
yeah. I mean, absolutely. Once you overcome that short-sighted mindset, the lane, the road doesn't just widen into multiple lanes, but it stretches out like
Hmm.
infinitely in front of you. So I feel that like I was actually feeling the length of how long this is going to take for me to get to where I want to go before I entered your class. So it was like I had this narrow view, like I just wanted to do film composing, but I was actually kind of getting overwhelmed with or numbed by the whole academic
Yeah.
process in general. So being able to overcome that short-sightedness and seeing that there's different ways to do this, there's different roads I can take, different lanes I can traverse, helped. But it's definitely a long road. Um,
Yeah, and it's all forward energy into your career journey. It's all forward energy. If you take a 1-year detour producing hip hop and producing and selling hip hop beats, it's not like the path is going forward and then you just took a hard right. No, you took like a 30-degree right or a 20-degree right, but it's still forward momentum into your career's journey. And you just allow yourself to take time. A lot of time you want to get there, you want to like leapfrog and instantly teleport to the part where you are successful and you are accepting, golden statues on stage, or you are seeing millions of streams, or whatever your goal is,
yeah,
you credit on screen. Um, that arc bends slowly, but it does bend forward.
right. Absolutely. This is
Yep.
a lot of really good information. We're going to take a short break for some announcements, and we'll be right back with Dave Kropf and get into number three. Everywhere you look, everywhere there's a place of somebody who needs you. Everywhere you look, when you're lost out there and you're all alone, life is waiting to carry you home. All right, we're back with Dave Kropf. This is Scholar TV for the NSCS here at Full Sail. Mr. Kropf, number three of the most consistent mistakes that students make.
Remember, it's Dave.
Oh, Dave.
Call me
Sorry.
Dave.
It's that military mindset. Like
it is, yeah. My dad was a career Marine, so I totally get it. Number three, students often only write what they know. And I have students that will sit in my class, and they are really good at the thing they already know. And they will often try to shoehorn what they know to do to fit within the project guidelines. Like, you have to write a hip hop cue, or you're writing a tension cue. Well, I'm really good at writing kind of happy clappy ukulele stuff, so I'm going to try to like make that fit, or just not even bother like reading and just here's what I know. And I don't think that is predicated on the idea that students are just, lazy or whatever. I think it's because sometimes it really sucks being bad at something, and learning to do something usually entails you being bad at that thing until you get good at that thing. And nobody wants to feel bad about what they do. It's why I play video games on easy mode, because I don't like I'm not looking for a challenge here. I just want to, feel good about myself. But when you're learning a new skill, often you have to go through like the dark journey of the soul to get on the other side, where you emerge not just victorious, but comfortable, and you have grown as an artist or as a creative person or as a student in general. And so I think that fear of the unknown, that fear of feeling bad and failing, keeps students stuck in their place, where like, I'm only going to write what I know because I don't want to fail at something. But failure is not just part of the process, it's integral to the process. Trying something and failing will often yield a steeper learning experience than succeeding the first time, because many students succeed the first time kind of by luck, by chance. They don't really understand how they succeeded. They just, it's innate, and that's good. And I bless and affirm those happy accidents. But if we're talking about a 20, 30, 40-year career arc, you're not going to be able to luck your way into a 40-year career. You need to know exactly how you got to where you got, as far as making music or painting sets or hanging lights or whatever. You need to know how you got there. And that usually means trying something new that you're probably not good at, that you will fail at. And that's okay. That's completely okay. So I hear a lot of students, because I do push a lot of students into different territories. I mean, in week one, they're writing like a kind of a happy orchestral uplifting type cue. In week two, they're writing a hip hop cue. In week three, they're writing like a tension underscore cue. And very rarely do I have one student who's like jamming on all three. Usually they're good at one or the other, like sound design, the tension cues, they're going to rock it. They're hip hop beat makers. Cue number two, they're going to rock it. They want to be a film composer. Cue number one, they're going to rock it. Very few can rock all three. That's by design. Those cues are different so that I can push students a little bit out of their comfort zone so they can feel that discomfort, because your career, your 20, 30, 40-year career arc will have areas of discomfort. And if you only stick with what you know, then that's probably, unless your, last name is Bowie, you're probably, as in David Bowie, you're probably not going to be able to make a sustainable 40-year career coming out of the gate doing just the one thing you know. and I hope that's okay to say. I'm if anything, I'm a pragmatist. You know, this is about a career, and this is about a sustainable career. And happy accidents are great, but I don't bank on happy
Oh
accidents.
yeah, I mean it's absolutely okay to say this point right here is one of the main reasons why I wanted to do this show because when I was watching you go through these the other day, it was like looking in a mirror. This point right here is exactly this was me during your class. About halfway through, I realized I was lost. I realized I was learning something completely new because I started writing with Fruity Loops and writing just little minimalist sounds and score, stuff that I thought would be cool in movies or whatnot. Um, when I came into your class, I was excited at first. I was like, "Oh yes, I'm going to be great at this class because I already knew, I've already been doing this." And then,
Mhm.
halfway through, I was like, why am I getting these grades, and why am I not acing everything? And because I was just writing, I wasn't realizing that there was a formula that you were teaching us that was specific to production
Mhm.
music, and so I was stuck in what I knew and or what I thought I knew, um, and it took me that it was that that was that aha moment that you talked
Mhm.
about, where I realized that, oh wow, this is something new, and this is also something that is very pertinent to where I want to go in the future,
Yeah.
and so that really helped. Um,
I'm glad. And the good news or bad news, depending on how you feel about this, is you never really outgrow
right,
that. Like I'm still learning new things, and I'm still pushing myself or trying to push myself into areas that I know are not comfortable for me because it only grows me as a composer. It only grows me as a creative individual. And so the earlier you can get used to that discomfort and welcome it as growth, right? It's like being sore after a workout. You're sore because, you're extending your muscles past what they could do the day
right,
before. So you work out, you lift weights, and the next day you're sore. And I don't know anybody who's like a weightlifter or works out that doesn't go, I'm so I hate that I worked
right,
out. No, that soreness, it hurts,
yeah,
but ultimately you feel good about it. You're like, yeah, I feel that feels good.
exactly. Yep.
And so
On
yeah.
this point, I just want to throw this information out to our students because some people might not know this. You can actually go back to your old courses. All of the lessons and everything is still online. If you're an online student, I'm not sure about how on campus works.
No, it's all because it's all the same
Right.
LMS.
So
So yeah.
everything is still there. Every lecture, every lesson is still there. I've actually spent more on your coursework in the last several months than I did the whole month I was working in your class. I've gone back and like, what did he say about this?
Well, things happen so fast. I have so much respect for full sail students. You have no idea. And doubly so for online students because it's really easy. Like campus students, and I love my campus students, don't get me wrong. But for campus students, you're stuck in a room for like 6 to 8 hours. Like you're there. You've got to
Right,
do it. But for online students, a lot of them, they're working school kind of wedged into the cracks and crevices, the margins of their already existing lives. And so I think that online students, especially online students really going for it, in some ways, they are more prepared for what this gig feels like because when you graduate, that's absolutely what the gig feels like. It's why I get up at 4:30 every morning. I sit down I'm in my studio by 6 a.m. I'm writing, doing work before, my day starts with Full Sail because that's what the gig
right,
feels like. And so for online students, a lot of respect. It moves so fast, and so often you're just hanging on, by your fingernails, while kids and jobs and work and my cat threw up in my shoe or whatever. And you have a
right,
cue due. You have an assignment due in 12 hours. And so I have so much respect. It was, in hindsight, your traditional school experience is significantly, in some ways, significantly easier because you get 16, 17 weeks, and it's kind of low pressure, and you have intramural sports and all this stuff. But Full Sail, really, and this isn't marketing spin. I've been teaching Full Sail for 10 years. It's not marketing to say that this is like the real world. This is what this feels like. And I know that because
Right.
I'm doing this. I am doing all of those
Yeah,
things.
I mean,
So yeah.
and speaking about how fast paced this is a great segue into our number four.
Yeah, students miss a lot of details. Guys, details, the currency in this industry, in any creative industry where you have deliverables and you have different clients asking different things. I mean, I work with 4 or 5 libraries, and they each want different things. They all want music, but this library wants WAV files. This library wants ACE. This library wants 48, 24, 48. This library is okay with 16, 44.1. This library wants you to email them an MP3 and then wait for feedback. And this library has a whole upload portal. And so there are a ton of details all floating around. And so I see students will often miss details for a couple of reasons. Reason number one has to do with some of those previous things. I think there's a level of impatience that happens. But the other thing is that learning styles are changing. Learning styles are evolving. I talked about this in the video, how learning is transitioning from deep memorization-based learning to hunter-gatherer learning, where if I need an answer to something, I'm going to go find it. And today's student can find information better than a generation before. And not just like Googling, but just being able to kind of, okay, this is where I would get this information. I don't need to retain it, but here's how I would find it. The hunter-gatherer versus, the generation, my generation, we didn't have the internet or whatever. And so in order to remember things like chord qualities and key signatures and those types of things, it was memorization. So it sits in you. There are advantages to and disadvantages to both styles of learning. And I think professionally, that needs to live somewhere in the middle. But in a learning style that is predominantly hunter-gatherer, that means a lot of skimming happens, a lot of fast-paced ingestion of information that is going to live in short-term RAM, if you will, and then gets kind of ejected. That's all well and good, but when you're juggling 4 or 5 different deliverables for different clients, then often things slip through the cracks. And so for students at Full Sail, you're taking 1, sometimes 2, sometimes 3 classes at once, and each professor has their own kind of hangups. This professor wants this. This professor says, you better call them Mr. Kropf, otherwise they're going to go apoplectic. I don't think that happens. But, this one wants salutations. This one doesn't. This one dropped an emoji in an email. This one would dock you GPS if you tried, and so you're balancing all of these things. But that's absolutely how it is. But substitute professor with assignment requirements, professor and assignment requirements, and substitute that with client and what their submission requirements are. It's 100% practice for how it is. It's not professors anymore. Now it's clients. And so a lot of details slip through the cracks, which can come off ultimately somewhat unprofessional. I mean, if I'm just being honest, it looks unprofessional when I get an assignment that it's obvious that the student did not read the assignment. They just kind of read the title of the assignment. They didn't read all of the requirements, and then just spit out something that they thought they knew, which could also be based on what we talked about earlier about writing what they know. So right, none of these things are in its own silo. There's a lot of bleed over that happens between all of these, write what you know, and that leads to student details and all of that. So a lot of details to balance. And in the entertainment industry, in the media industry, details, that's currency. And so we have to be really on top of it. And I'm as guilty of missing details. So I'm not hanging this on a younger generation. I shared a story on that video about sending an email to the wrong publisher just because I forgot the name of the library owner. So I'm like, hey, Josh, I think it was Josh or Ryan. Well, here's the thing. It's like, I think you mean the other guy. And I felt completely stupid. It was very unprofessional.
Yeah, I mean, after working 8 hours and then, as far as an online student goes, working 8 hours and then parenting, and I finally sit down at my computer at like, 8 o'clock at night, and it's really easy to go into that scan mode, that you're talking about. I had to actually break myself of that and break out some paper and pencil, because and I'm so glad that Full Sail, um, allows multiple chances. Most of the tests that
Hmm.
you take gives you multiple chances, because there's been several times where I have found how, um, you know um, how much of a disservice that scan mode does for you. Like I'll do that, and I'll think I have everything. And I'll be like, okay, submit, and then my score comes back and I've got a 78 or something. And I'm like, oh, that's not going
Yeah.
to cut it. Um,
And
so
you're like, he's wrong. And then you go back and read like, oh, I see where I missed it.
so I'll end up having to do it two or three, two or three times, to get the score I want. And if I had just done it, if I had just committed the first time, I probably would have spent less time
Yeah.
on the entire assignment. So yeah, we lots of great information, Mr. I almost did it again,
Yep. It's all good.
Dave.
I accept it.
All right, we're back at Scholar TV with Mr. Dave, and we're gonna
Now I'm Mr. Dave. I like it.
Mr.
I
Dave.
like it.
It's still a Mister. I
Right.
gotta have a
You
Mister
have
there.
the respect, which I can respect, but then you also have the cordial kind of Dave. So no, it's fine.
Okay. So number five. This last one.
Number five. This is a big one, and that is that students, and this isn't really like what they get wrong, but it's just kind of a misconception. Students sometimes learn that they don't want to do this, that the career is actually not for them, and that's a tough one, especially if you're sitting there with a degree in something that you're like, you know what, I have a degree in this, but I don't want to do it for a living. Well, for one thing, congratulations on getting your degree, because degrees are of value, even if like that degree isn't something that you're going to ultimately use in your career. It's still valuable. This degree itself still has value to you, even if you don't do that thing. So I just want to say that on the front end. This isn't about not graduating. This isn't about not finishing your degree. But sometimes students, they'll come into my class and they just, let me back that up. My class, I really try to make it feel like what it actually feels like in the industry, with due dates, deadlines, changing parameters. This week, you have to do this week, and it all changes because that's absolutely what it feels like. And so I tell my students, like, you have nothing to prove to me in this class. The fact that you're here in Project and Portfolio 2, you've made it this far, tells me that on some level, you are committed to this, not just financially, not just the resources it takes to put yourself, like either your parents, future version of you, or the government, somebody is paying for this. So you're already have my respect for that. But the fact that you've passed enough classes and you're here, so you have nothing to prove to me. So I tell students, use this month to prove to yourself that you really, really do want this, because I'm all about helping you get a 20, 30, 40-year career in this industry. But 40 years is a long time. It's a really long time. And so you might find out in the course of my class that you don't want to do this. You don't feel like you really have what it takes, right? And it's not to say that you're not going to have down times and times when you don't want to create, you don't want to sit down and write music. But that battery charges pretty fast for me. I get burned out. I need to step away and just go play video games or something. But eventually, the itch starts, oh, I got to write. I got to get in the studio, or the love of learning comes back. But if that isn't you, that's okay, because that's all part of learning too. Go off and do the thing that you're meant to do. Do the thing that brings you joy. And I don't mean to turn into like a Marie Kondo kind of, or Kondo, after school special or whatever, but go find the thing that sparks joy, because somewhere out there is something that does get you awake in the morning, that you would, I'm going to wake up at 4:30 a.m. You don't have to do 4:30. It's just what worked for me. So I'm using it metaphorically. What one thing is going to get me up at 4:30 in the morning so that I can go do it? Because for me, it wasn't, a call center at American Express. For me, it wasn't even being a drummer. I spent the better part of my adult life pursuing and being a successful professional percussionist. That's what I went to. I studied at Appalachian State in North Carolina. I did drums. It's what pulled me away from composition, because it came easy to me. See my previous, I don't like doing things that I'm bad at, so I avoid them, right? Percussion came very easily to me, and I got plenty of success as a drummer and a percussionist. But I knew that I didn't ultimately want to do it when I found myself feeling relieved when drum students would cancel their lessons. I felt relief. I'm like, woo, now I can just, hang out or do something else. Because there is someone out there who gets excited about those drum set lessons. Let them, the students, they deserve that. I owe it to the students. They deserve someone who is as excited about teaching them drums as they are about learning, and about how I am now about teaching composition. As you could probably tell, I have no shortage of excitement about this entire topic. And hopefully, Dan, you tell me, my classes, it exudes that. I just can't stop talking about this industry. Right. In my entire 11 years teaching drum set specifically in Memphis, never, no. What was I excited about? What did I talk to my guys about? My students? I would talk about production. I would talk about DJing. I would talk about writing trip hop and acid jazz and all of that kind of stuff. And drum set was almost mentally an afterthought. I did it because it was easy. I did it because I was just good at it naturally, but I definitely wasn't pushing myself. And so last year, actually, I kind of came to this epiphanal moment that this being a drummer isn't giving me life. I enjoy it. I still dabble in it, but as far as pursuing a career in it, it's not for me. And that was super tough, because being a drummer, percussionist was baked into my identity. And so kind of walking away from that. I'm here to tell you that it's okay. I'm giving you permission to try something and realize that you don't have to do that thing. Even if you're studying it, even if you're on the last month of your degree, finish your degree, get that degree. But if you realize that, no, I don't want to pour 40 years into this thing, 20 years, whatever, that's okay. Go do the thing that you can see yourself pouring 40 years into.
Right. And this is a great place to plug the War of Art, because this could be. It takes a lot of soul searching, I think, to actually figure out whether or not you're really just not wanting to do it, or whether it's resistance.
Yeah, that's what Stephen Pressfield talks in his book, War of Art. He talks about resistance, which is where procrastination is born from, and those types of things. It's born, that he calls it resistance. Anything that gets in the way of ultimately you moving into a better version of you, that thing that gets in the way is, right. He calls it resistance.
Yeah, and I'm the master procrastinator. But when I started your class, like I said, I was kind of numbed by the whole academic process. I hadn't yet, and I still haven't done a class just on film music. I'm hoping that's coming up in this final year.
Yeah. I think that's project 6. I think.
I got you. You're cool. So learning all these different things that it's not really where my heart and soul is and everything. But production music was was the closest that I've come, and I'm really glad that I learned it because it kind of brought the shine back to my penny,
Hmm.
um, and because I was actually kind of overwhelmed. I was almost at that place to where I was like, do I really want to do this? You know, this is a lot more work than what I thought it was. Um, and I think every student feels that at one
Yeah, a
time or
hundred
another.
percent. Well, because I mean, especially Full Sail, it's so fast and so intense. It kind of becomes a vocational crucible, and you're getting kind of ground down, and not like in a kind of kung fu master snatch the pebble from my hand again kind of way, but just the industry is crucible enough, right? And so Full Sail in modeling the industry becomes a more intense version of what your traditional school is, right? Because we do real world experience, real world teachers. The professors at Full Sail, are just like me. I'm out there getting air on TV, and I'm teaching students how to get air on TV. But that also means that some of the things that can kind of grind you into a nub in the industry make their way into the school. And it's my job to help shield you from the things that are going to like grind you so far down that you do want to table flip. But on the other hand, um, if it's not for you, then that's, I don't know. That seems really sad to be pouring yourself into something that ultimately you have no love for, when I believe the universe has something for you out there. And it's such like, I started this whole list by saying, hey, don't have too narrow of a vision. And then at the end of the list, I'm saying, maybe it's not for you, and that's cool. Be okay with you, and be okay with where you're at as a person and as a creative. And I recognize that those are somewhat paradoxical sentiments. I get that.
I mean, not really. Like if you're in the beginning, if you're short sighted, you don't really have the full view to begin with. If you have this narrow view of what you think the industry is, and then by going through this experience at this college, you realize that it is a whole different beast. You might come to the point to where you're like, you know what, this isn't what I thought it was, and so what you're saying is that it's okay to acknowledge that
Yeah.
and say, it's not, maybe it's not for me. But on the flip side of that, I was almost at that place because I was learning this stuff that when am I going to learn what I want to do,
Mhm.
and then in your class, I didn't learn what the film music, but I learned something that was just as valuable to me. It was just another tool in my toolbox
Mhm.
because I was like, oh wow, so there's something else I can do that I can be just as passionate about and make a sustainable living off of this, and while I wait for the big credits
Yep.
for the
Yep.
blockbuster
And
films
and
or
it doesn't
whatnot.
have to be a binary choice. You don't have to
Right,
choose to be a film composer or a production music composer. You can be all those things.
right.
But at the end of the day, um, I totally forgot what I was gonna say. Uh, I had it all wound up. I was gonna say, oh, here it was. At the end of the day, if it starts out as a passion or as a hobby, as soon as you start to careerify it, that's that can often squash the love of that thing if you're not really, really meant to do it, right? And it's okay. Like I like writing. I like being like I've got like a sci-fi novel, young adult sci-fi novel. I'm just chipping away at a little bit at a time. But am I going to be a professional author? No, I'm not, because I don't have gas in the tank to do that kind of discipline and that creative output. But as soon as if I were to start to try to careerify that, then the love of it, the passion of it, the joy of doing it can get squashed out. And I think Full Sail is really good at helping students realize that, because you jump in. Like if you're really applying yourself in your classes, you don't have time to just figure it out slowly. Usually, because in my class, you have to submit a first cue within the first 7 days of being in the class. You're writing music and you're turning it in the first 7 days. And
Right.
you write 3 cues in my week, in my class, and by the end of it, you're delivering final waves, final deliverable files. And so for many students, the process of learning what your hobby or passion will feel like when you careerify it can be eye-opening for many students.
Yeah. I mean, the as the War of Art, he says, when you go from amateur to pro, becoming pro, he says, what did he say? I write whenever inspiration strikes, but thankfully it strikes every morning at
Yep,
9
every morning at 9 a.m.
a.m.
Absolutely. Yep.
So it's been great going through this list. I want to wrap it up with to just give me a rundown of the five, just so people
Okay.
hear
Yep. Here
the
it
five
is.
stuff.
Number one, students often have a myopic view of what their career will look like. Number two, students often want instant results. Student number three, students will often only write what they know, often out of a sense of fear of the unknown and being bad at something. Students, number four, students often will miss a lot of details. And number five, students sometimes learn that they ultimately don't want to do this, and that's okay.
Awesome. I really appreciate you joining me today. I know that all of our students and our chapter members got a lot of really good information from this. Um, I Everybody, all of you guys out there, make sure you like and subscribe. I have a lot of stuff in store for you that I'm not at liberty to say right now because it's not concrete. But keep an eye on the channel, and we'll see you next time.
All right.